Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top story is a senior commander of the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah is reportedly killed in an Israeli airstrike ahead of the arrival of US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Our other headlines, one of the most iconic destinations in the world, how the Maldives is getting ready for more Chinese tourists. Investigators find the door that blew out of the Boeing 737 MAX jet last week, as Alaska Airlines admits the plane had previously reported problems. And the groundbreaking international collaboration between scientists in China and the United States that could revolutionize computing. A senior commander of the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah has reportedly been killed in an Israeli airstrike. This comes as US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected to arrive in Israel in an attempt to try to calm growing tension and prevent the fighting in Gaza spilling over into a wider Middle East conflict. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent Trent Murray, watching events for us in Tel Aviv. Trent, what more do we know about this Hezbollah commander?
Well, we are hearing in the past couple of hours from Lebanese media sources that there was an airstrike on a car in southern Lebanon, and in that car was a man called Wassim Tawil. Now, he is a senior commander of an elite special forces group that operates in southern Lebanon with the sole goal, really, of trying to maintain security on the border, but also to infiltrate Israel. Now, this detail is, we're still trying to find out more, but what we would know is that if this airstrike is verified that Wassim Tawil was killed, well, it would represent the most senior Hezbollah official to be killed in an Israeli airstrike since the October 7th conflict began. Now, of course, we have seen airstrikes already, most notably last week when that strike killed the deputy leader of Hamas, Salah Aruri. What makes this different, though, is that this is a senior commander from Hezbollah, based in Lebanon. Now, Hezbollah is aligned to Hamas, but it said it would respond to that attack in Beirut on its, I guess, its ally, you could say. But the fact today that one of its own senior commanders has now been targeted, well, that could really potentially represent a significant escalation. We already know the IDF is at its highest state of readiness on the northern border of Israel. It's been in that position since last week, that strike on Beirut. One would imagine, based on the news we're hearing today, that they are watching and waiting even more closely than normal to see whether Hezbollah will now respond to this strike.
And US Secretary of State Antony Blinken expected in Israel later. What, if anything, can we expect from this visit?
Yeah, well, we've just learned in the past couple of minutes he's touched down in Saudi Arabia, which is his next stop on this major diplomatic offensive by Washington to try and dial down the tensions here and bring down the temperature. We know that Secretary Blinken has been speaking to leaders across the region, and many of them have reiterated a message that they would like Washington to apply pressure to Israel to announce a ceasefire. I certainly don't think, based on the rhetoric we're hearing from Israeli officials, that is an announcement that will come anytime soon. But we do know the Americans have certainly been pushing for answers, both publicly and privately, from Israel on when they're going to sort of switch gears in their warfare tactic away from the kind of high-intensity operation that we've been seeing to something that's a bit more targeted. One would imagine that will be high on the agenda when Secretary Blinken arrives here, but also this question of the future of what happens in Gaza after this conflict comes to an end. The Israelis announced a plan in recent days in which they say they would like to maintain security there, but they are certainly open and supportive of Palestinian factions taking over the civilian affairs within the Strip. But for them, they say a red line in that idea is Hamas having any sort of role in the future within the governance of Gaza.
Trent, thank you for that. Our correspondent Trent Murray in Tel Aviv. Well, Gaza officials say at least 249 Palestinians have now been killed by Israeli forces in the last 24 hours. Strikes have been reported in the city of Khan Yunis as well as in Rafah near the border with Egypt, where thousands of displaced people are sheltering in tents. The health ministry says Israeli drones have also opened fire near the Al-Aqsa Mosque in the centre of the Strip. Well, our correspondent Noor Harazin reports from outside the hospital in central Gaza.
Well, the situation here inside the Shuhada Al-Aqsa hospital is actually collapsing. This very busy hospital over the past weeks that was receiving hundreds of people daily, not only as injuries and patients, but also displaced people used to take refuge inside this hospital. Now, most of the people, the displaced people, have left. They are heading to Rafah. Also, a number of patients and doctors, nurses inside the hospital left the hospital fearing for their safety. This comes after a continuous Israeli shelling towards the hospital and the buildings surrounding the hospital. At the same time, a number of live bullets actually hit the buildings of the hospital. And people inside the hospital, if we're talking about patients, doctors, they are fearing the fact that what happened inside the Al-Shifa hospital will happen again in Shuhada Al-Aqsa hospital, and that's why they left, even though they have nowhere to go. And let me also mention some information about the Shuhada Al-Aqsa hospital. This is one of Gaza's biggest medical complex. It is very similar to the Al-Shifa hospital. It is also the one and only hospital operating here in Middle Gaza. There is a number of doctors, actually, like 4 or 5 doctors now inside the hospital, but they can't control the big number of patients inside the hospitals.
Germany says its decision to unblock the sale of fighter jets to Saudi Arabia is due to the changed situation following the 7th of October Hamas attack on Israel. The policy shift was announced on Sunday by the Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock during her visit to Israel. Berlin had halted deliveries of Eurofighter jets to Riyadh due to human rights concerns. But the government now says it will not oppose further sales, citing Saudi's very constructive attitude toward Israel. 4 people have been killed in Ukraine as Kyiv issued a countrywide air raid alert following large-scale Russian missile attacks. Kyiv residents were ordered to take shelter, while authorities in the Zaporizhzhia and Kharkiv area reported what they called massive missile attacks. Meanwhile, Russia moved 300 people living in the border area of Belgorod because of Ukrainian strikes. This is the largest evacuation of a major Russian city since this conflict began. United States lawmakers have reached a $1.66 trillion agreement on federal spending for the year. It's an important step in avoiding a looming government shutdown, but congressional lawmakers still need to allocate where this money will go. Funding for several parts of the U.S. government is set to run out on the 19th of January. The death toll from the New Year's Day earthquake in Japan has now risen to more than 160 people. Around 300 are still missing, with heavy snow and rain complicating rescue efforts. More than 2,000 people are still without power, and many have been forced to move to emergency shelters. Now, his country is often described as a series of paradise islands. The president of the Maldives has arrived in Beijing for a 5-day state visit as the two countries look to boost trade and tourism. Our correspondent Huang Yue reports.
According to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Chinese President Xi Jinping will hold a welcome ceremony and a banquet for President Moise, and the two heads of state will hold formal talks and jointly attend the signing ceremony of cooperation documents. Meanwhile, Chinese Premier Li Qiang and Chairman of the National People's Congress Standing Committee Zhao Leji will also meet with President Moise. So this is Maldivian president's first state visit to a foreign country since he took office in November last year, and he's also the first foreign head of state to visit China in the new year. China also noted that over the past 10 years, the bilateral relations have developed deeply. The two sides have achieved fruitful results in jointly building the Belt and Road Initiative and practical cooperation in various fields. And of course, when talking about the Maldives, the first word that pops up is tourism. Tourism is the pillar industry of the country, and from 2010, China was the largest source of tourists to the Maldives for 10 consecutive consecutive years. And another important thing that's worth mentioning is the China-Maldives Friendship Bridge, which is known as a flagship project under the Belt and Road Cooperation. The bridge was officially opened in late August 2018 with a designated service life of 100 years, which played an important role in the Maldives' economic and social development. And the Maldivian President Moise once said that this bridge has changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, both people living there and visitors, because it gave rise to bridge-related jobs in the country. So both sides attach great importance to this visit.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, Boeing shares descend as investigators locate the door that blew out during a flight in the United States, raising serious safety concerns.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us, excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. The senior commander of the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah is reportedly killed in an Israeli airstrike ahead of the arrival of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Our other headlines: the president of the Maldives begins a 5-day state visit to Beijing with a focus on boosting trade and tourism. Investigators in the United States say they found the door that blew out of the Boeing 737 MAX jet mid-flight last week. Alaska Airlines says the plane was under flight restrictions because of previously reported problems. The U.S. Aviation Administration grounded some Boeing jets in response. The plane manufacturer has called a company-wide safety meeting to discuss this incident. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Karina Mitchell, in New York. Karina, what more have we heard from the United States aviation authorities?
Well, hello to you, Jamie. Well, in the U.S., the National Transportation Board, the NTSB, has said that Alaska Airlines actually put restrictions on that particular aircraft on Flight 1282 that had that fateful event that happened on January 5th. And that is because that aircraft had 3 previous incidents tied to it. The first one happening a month ago on December 7th. The second one just a couple of days before on January 3rd. Mid-flight, a warning light went off, tied to pressurization issues with that flight. And then the next day, on January 4th, that same warning light went on at the end of the flight. Now, Alaska Airlines had called for another look at maintenance to see what was going on, but that maintenance check didn't happen in time before this incident on January 5th, with 177 passengers and crew on board. The flight had just taken off from Portland en route to California. and at about 4,800 meters is when this cabin door plug blew off the aircraft. So restrictions included not flying this particular plane on any long-haul flights. It was not allowed to fly over water, and the NTSB says that's because it could then make a very quick landing if need be. Now, important to note that we haven't tied what happened on January 5th to any of these warning lights or previous incidents that happened. But also interesting to note that this plane has only been in service, Jamie, for 2 months and started having issues, it seems, almost a month after it went into delivery. The FAA did clear that flight, to go into service. Now, Spirit Aerosystems is the maker of the door, that cabin door plug, and they did confirm that they are the ones that placed the door in that plane. So as you mentioned, that door has been found, in the backyard of a Portland school teacher, so I'm sure there will be some careful analysis that goes on to find out what happened there, Jamie.
I'm sure there will be. What's the company saying? How is Boeing responding to all of this?
Well, it's the latest woe, isn't it, tied to its cash cow MAX fleet, which is its best-selling aircraft. As a result of this incident, the FAA has made the rare move to temporarily ground 171 of those planes with the particular configuration that we're talking about in this incident. United has most of those planes, about 70. Alaska Airlines has about 60 plus of those planes, so it's resulted in a lot of cancellations and disruptions. But Boeing really has come under so much scrutiny after those 2 ill-fated plane crashes tied to its MAX 8 jet, which took place in 2018 and 2019, killing nearly 350. Those planes were then grounded for almost 2 years. They only started going back into the service at the end of 2020. In fact, China just started resuming those MAX flights in 2023. So Boeing did issue a statement. They said they're cooperating with the investigation. They agree with the grounding. And CEO Dave Calhoun said in a message Sunday, quote, "When serious accidents like this occur, it is critical for us to work transparently with our customers and regulators to understand and address the causes of the event to ensure that this doesn't happen again." Obviously, nobody wants anything like this to happen again. It was a terrifying moment for people on the flight. Boeing stock sharply lower before the opening bell today, Jamie.
Karina, thank you for that. Our correspondent, Karina Mitchell in New York, and much more on the story in our later programs. German farmers have begun a week-long protest blockading the country's major roads in a dispute over government plans to phase out agricultural subsidies. Protesters caused huge tailbacks during the morning rush hour as farmers used their tractors to block highways and main routes, including Berlin's Brandenburg Gate. They're warning a cut to tax breaks will cause farms to go out of business.
We as farmers had to endure a lot of cuts of all kinds in recent years. We were handed orders and regulations, and the announced cut for agricultural diesel was the tipping point. The overall resentment finally broke into the open and ended up with this demonstration here. We are hearing from a lot of people who support this protest, be they craftsmen or haulage companies.
A far-right extremist who carried out Norway's worst-ever mass killing is suing the country in a bid to end his prison isolation. Anders Behring Breivik killed 77 people in a bombing and shooting rampage in Oslo back in 2011. Breivik says the confinement violates his human rights. Lawyers representing the state say Breivik's isolation is necessary because of continuing security threats. Bangladesh's Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has secured a 4th term in office after her party won an absolute majority in the general election, boycotted by opposition groups. The opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party described the election as a sham. Thousands of BNP members have been imprisoned, while rallies have been met by a heavy police presence leading up to Sunday's vote. Scientists from China and the United States have created the world's first semiconductor made from graphene, a single layer of carbon atoms bound in a honeycomb-like shape. The discovery is seen as a huge leap forward for superfast computing beyond silicon, which is said to be reaching its limits. The global graphene market was valued at $865 million in 2022, and that's projected to grow to almost $3.5 billion by the year 2030. Graphene, the building block of graphite, is harder than diamonds and 200 times stronger than steel. It's used in a variety of sectors, including electronics and health. Some common uses include cooling technology in mobile phones, portable battery packs, and to coat your car to protect the paintwork. Well, China is the world's biggest graphene-producing country, making 630,000 metric tons of it every year, which was around 70% of the world's total in 2022. Making up the top three producers are Brazil and Canada. Well, Mei Li is chair professor at Tianjin University, who leads the team of researchers who made this discovery. He showed me the graphene chip that they've created.
Okay, so this is a very very first graphene based transistor. It works as a digital devices. You see what I mean?
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Before, actually, people use graphene to make some device, but that's analog, or it's like digital electronics, but with very bad on-off ratio. This one, the one what I have in my hand now, is the real one. Can work as a practical digital electronics.
Now, I know this has been your life's work and your colleagues' life work, and this has been a huge endeavor. Just give me an idea of the excitement that you finally get to this point. What's this journey been like for you?
Okay, so I think this kind of experience, or this kind of work, start from 2001. Actually, my collaborator, or my former supervisor, one was in Georgia Tech, Walter here. He started graphene electronics back to 2001, and then afterwards, back to 2016, we actually moved back to China. Me and him, we founded this center called Tianjin International Center for Nanoparticle Nanosystems, and we concentrate on the application in graphene electronics. So actually, it's my students work on our project. Basically, I assigned him to use different crystal facets, to tune the particles of graphene. And in order to get some special particles of graphene, and all of a sudden we found some special materials. It has huge flakes, and it's perfect crystal. And then we found this has a band gap. This is a long standing problem for the graphene without the gap. But we found this has the gap. I mean, it's energy gap. So that means this is a perfect semiconductor. So then we get very excited because this is people actually looking for this. Graphene with band gap for many, many years.
Tell me about the timeline of what happens next. I mean, how long will it be before this has a substantial impact and brings a substantial change into our lives? Are we talking months, years, decades?
So that is a good question, and also is a big question. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, if we look back, the journey for silicon, start from this. The beginning to eventually be used as a popular electronic materials took 50 years. So if we do a simple calculation for this for the graphene, and I think it started from 2001 and already 24 years. If you think they have to experience same period of time in order to make a graphene to the graphene electronics. There must be another 10 to 20 years, I think.
This is an extraordinary story of international cooperation and collaboration, isn't it, between China and the United States? How important has that international collaboration been?
Yes, it is very important. I always note, if we don't have the international collaborations, the development of science or technology in the world will be stopped. At least it's much, much slower than before. So I think, international collaboration will be and already is okay for the development of the science and technology in the world.
The first group of US students taking part in an exchange program with China have just arrived. The exchange, announced by China's President Xi Jinping during the APEC summit in California, aims to see 50,000 young Americans visit China over the next 5 years. CGTN's correspondent Huang Yichang went to meet some of them.
10 students from California State University Long Beach have arrived in Qingdao as part of the first wave of groups from the United States attending exchange programs in China over the next 5 years.
My warm welcome to you. Despite the cold weather, I hope you can feel the warmth of our hospitality.
Despite a long, over 30-hour journey, the students are thrilled by the excitement that greets them at every corner.
Look at it, it's great.
From the vibrant lights that fill the streets to the grand shopping malls with the impressive screens.
It's huge. I would say everything in China is just like really big.
And even the water scenery.
I like that bridge.
A world of discovery is waiting for them to explore.
Because in Qingdao, I want to try the beer.
I am very excited about making dumplings.
At their first destination, a famous skyscraper in Qingdao, the students are enjoying a panoramic view of the city and the Yellow Sea. But this trip goes beyond just having fun. It aims to strengthen people-to-people relations between the two countries.
We need trust, understanding, and friendships between the people in our two countries to meet future challenges. By fostering people-to-people exchanges among the youth, we can lay the foundation for cooperation between not only our universities, but our two nations.
Okay, I'll scan you. I got this.
For these young minds, the visit is about building connections and cultivating lasting friendships.
I think it's important for cultures to come together, especially with the U.S. and China, since we're one of the bigger countries in the whole world. So it's important for me to see the culture for myself and experience that and see what it's really like here.
I would like to talk to Chinese people and, see what their life is like, that kind of thing.
When a welcome banner appeared bearing the words, "The future lies with the youth," someone quickly recognized where the words came from.
President Xi's words.
How do you know it?
President Xi said this after his meeting with President Biden.
In San Francisco.
In San Francisco, yes.
Very monumental moment.
These young ambassadors are poised to immerse themselves in the environment beyond what they've learned from the textbooks and the internet. The words on the banner may resonate with them as everyone looks forward to a future where friendships could bridge the gap between the two countries. Huang Yichang, CGTN, Qingdao, Shandong Province.
Now, in another giant leap for mankind.
And liftoff of the first United Launch Alliance Vulcan rocket, launching a new era in spaceflight to the moon and beyond.
The first United States spacecraft bound for the moon in more than 50 years has launched from Florida. It's also the first to be privately funded. It'll take around 7 weeks for the Vulcan rocket to reach the lunar surface. Then the Peregrine lander will leave the craft to collect data ahead of planned human missions.
5, 4.
The headlines again. A senior commander of the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah is reportedly killed in an Israeli airstrike ahead of the arrival of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Our other headlines: the president of the Maldives begins a 5-day state visit to Beijing with a focus on boosting trade and tourism. And investigators find the door that blew out of the Boeing 737 MAX jet last week, as Alaska Airlines admits the plane had previously reported problems. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.